Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Cynthia Schwartz with the Competitive Intelligence Community, CIC community. I'd like to welcome all of you for coming this afternoon. Jim and I are happy to have you with us. I've got a couple of housekeeping items that I want to run through right now, and then we will get set to go. Our first major thank you, of course, is to our sponsors, Aurora WDC. We're thrilled to have them along with us, and very much appreciate their sponsorship. And I also want to say that our webinar is part of the content that the SLA CI community produces. In addition to the webinar program, we have a fantastic lineup of presentations at our conference, and hopefully you were able to take part in them. We also have a survey, which is kind of right in front of you. The link is in the chat pane. And with all that great content, we want to know more about what you want to see. We're conducting an engagement survey that in about 5 minutes will give you the chance to tell us how we can better serve you, what topics you'd like to see, how you'd like to hear from us. We'd love to be able to work on that. So again, that link will appear in the chat pane. And if you could take a few minutes to do that, that would be terrific. Jim, can you move to the third slide? Terrific. So it is better to give than receive, and we're not talking about money. What we would like is some of your time. We'd like to ask individuals to get involved with the CIC community, and please to give back to the community if you find that it's value. If you've learned something, if you've built a network, or if you simply appreciate the support of like-minded individuals, then please pay it forward. Could you please send an email to our incoming CIC president-elect, Phil Britton? Actually, he's currently president-elect, but incoming president. His contact information is on the screen at the bottom, and you can ask how you can help. A little of your time, usually just a few hours a month. That would be terrific. Third slide, please, Jim. And our upcoming dates. So we have a couple of things going by now. In January, SLA has the certificate program for Intel 07 Human Source Intelligence. If you'd like to be able to enhance research, analysis, and intelligence skills, then that is definitely the one that you want to handle. It's planning, it's decision making, there's recorded lectures, there's live discussions, there's flexibility in your schedule. You'll hear more about that. And you can also visit sla.org and click the learning tab to see those details. There is also in January upcoming SLA's Innovation Challenge. And we are all invited to submit an innovation or an idea that could generate revenue and or growth for SLA. You can form a team, you can be members of SLA, non-members, industry partners, as many people as you want or individually. And we're looking for as many ideas as possible, and there's no limit. Please, if you do come up with some brilliant thing, which I know you will, please submit by Wednesday, January 13th. And we also, CIC community, will have a January webinar. We're fixing those dates shortly, so that will be announced. And you can stay tuned to our SLA media channels, social media, etc., and you'll have that date right away. Jim, can you give me the next slide, please?
Certainly.
So speaking of today, we want to thank everybody for taking some of your time out of your day to join this particular webinar. And you should know that one lucky attendee will be randomly selected to win a $25 gift card. And the quote on the screen, of course, is from one of our attendees on our last webinar in November. And from Nat Brooks's webinar, we have renewed an old friend, someone who had been very active in the past and had retired and is now part of us. So next slide, Jim, and this will be what we'd like for you to do. If you are a fan of live tweeting during the webinar, the hashtag is below CIC webinar. We encourage you to use that during Jim's webinar and share your insights as we're going. And for our next slide, I will have a fabulous introduction for Jim Miller, who is sitting in front of you. So Jim is the principal of Connect Public Affairs. It's a consultancy that provides strategic competitive intelligence for business, industry associations, and not-for-profit organizations to help them effectively manage their public affairs challenges. He has recently founded Your Brain Is Not Full, an organization dedicated to building a community of individuals and organizations, advocating for the development of a continuous learning mindset throughout their entire lifetime. We've certainly all been doing that in the last few months. Jim has been a member of SLA since 2005 and is currently a director, excuse me, and currently a director on the board of directors of SLA. He has previously served as content chair of the competitive intelligence community. And now I give you Jim Miller. Jim, you're on.
Right. Thank you, Cynthia, for that introduction. And just I would be remiss if I didn't promote the Innovation Challenge as a member of the board of SLA. I think that's a great opportunity for people, particularly in our profession, who are quite innovative and are working with fairly closely with the business community and as well as government and other not-for-profit organizations that are getting revenue sources, and I think that innovative ideas which lead to perpetuating SLA and the value and professional development that we provide is important. So I want you to give that a very good look, and hopefully you can submit an idea to SLA Innovation Challenge. Anyhow, so now that I've had my shameless plug put in forward, I just want to get on to what the today's topic. And when I looked at this, when I was first asked to do this about my continuous learning and initiative, and I want to thank Eric Johnson actually for that, who was a big supporter. And I've been working on this idea for a while. I've actually just launched the organization for a few months ago, and so it's still in its really, really early phase. And what I wanted to do is to look at the skills I was using as an information professional, as a CI person, as someone doing strategic foresight, particularly around the non-market community. And again, I think that's something that hasn't been really looked at, is sort of the non-market of regulation, government, interest groups, organizations that are not affecting the market. Well, they affect the market, but they're not part of the market so much directly. So Your Brain Is Not Full was developed in the sense of, it's a mantra for me in the sense of your brain is not full, and we have to continue to continuously learning and develop that mindset that we have to keep doing that. It's no longer the sort of idea that I've gone through, I've completed high school or a university degree, and I'm done, and I'm never going to be learning again. And I think that we've certainly seen that that's something that's been accelerated recently. So again, when I look at the CI component of it, and I think it has an important part, because a lot of the skills that we use in our CI programs are also used and utilized in developing that continuous learning mindset. And I see it as sort of a strategic foresight for education, training, career planning. And I think that this is an area that is certainly growing and is certainly going to be rapidly evolving in the near future, in the sense that we need to sort of look at ideas around what roles that people will be playing, what jobs they'll be doing, what skills they'll need in order to participate in the economy in the future. And I think that people with the CI background and foresight background have an excellent role to play in helping to do this. And I think, and I'll just talk briefly about where I sort of saw this starting, is in the whole concept around skills shortages and skill mismatches. Recent survey that just came out actually from the Canadian manufacturers and exporters, because I'm here in Ottawa, Canada, so a lot of these stats will be Canadian. 60% of the employers said they reported having immediate labor skills shortages, and the same with here. This closing the skills gap. 69% of U.S. employers struggling to find skilled workers. This is Manpower Group research. the cartoon, I would find it, you might think it's ironic, but it's not. When I worked in government, we were supposed to go to the grand opening of a apprenticeship and skills trades training college, and unfortunately, the grand opening had to be delayed. And why? Because they couldn't find enough skilled trades to actually build the building. So the irony and the reality connecting there. But so it is a problem that we're facing, and I think that the CI and strategic foresight can certainly assist with helping that, and that's either helping individuals or helping companies. So the World Economic Forum is featured jobs report, pointed to the disruption of automation as well as the pandemic, and 85 million jobs being displaced by 2025. But among those that are going to remain, 50% will need some form of reskilling. So the question then is, how do we find out what those jobs are going to be, what skills that we'll need to do that? Again, as I say, the pandemic has certainly disrupted that, accelerated the need for change. I did some work recently with polytechnics and community colleges here in Canada, and we see where their entire economic activity was disrupted, and across the board had to, disrupted their model of the school year being upset, the fast tracking automation, digitization of programs and how they deliver programs. And of course, the devastation across labor markets, I guess, is a negative piece, but the positive of it, the opportunities for online learning, redeployment of people, and reemployment in different areas. This, I think, is a great quote in looking at the strategic foresight aspect of it, in the sense of, this is a quote from Mary Barra, who was then chairman of CEO of General Motors and chair of the Business Roundtable Education and Workforce Committee. And I think that that's the thing, is that we're looking at people's individual potential, not just what degrees do they have, what their actual credentials, but actually looking at the skills and that they have to do that. And it's not so much how they got it. That's an important component which we have to look at. But I think it's the fact that they're actually doing it, that they're going out and actually have that mindset that's continually saying, well, I'm going to have to learn something new. I can't just stop and sit back and not continue learning new things. So again, I look at this as a strategic foresight in the sense of looking at where the jobs are. If you look at the last 10 years and you look at the number of jobs that are that didn't exist, and if we look 10 years forward, even 20 years forward, there will be different industries, different positions that they don't exist now, but they will exist, and somehow we'll have to be able to prepare for that, whether it be through education and training, through and then all of the components of that. Who pays for it? How do we find out information about it? How do we connect employers, employees, education institutions, excuse me, in order to connect people so they can make a contribution. Going into the CI component, I guess it really starts with sort of the environmental scanning, monitoring, and allows us to look at the skills that we have through environmental scanning, so as a baseline to look at what are the trends, what are the industry trends, what are the growth trends as to who's investing in what education, what components are people looking at as far as where they're looking to hire people. And again, the acceleration of this through by the pandemic is certainly contributing to a lot of the ups and downs in the demand. I had one person I spoke to who was the CEO of a large learning management system here in Canada, who said that they were interviewing people, and the people who were there hiring were saying, well, so will we get an office? It's sort of like they don't want to work from home. There's the work from home, not work from home component. And that was their perk, right? It's not ping pong or free food. It's, do we get an office we can go back to? Whereas other larger companies like Shopify here in Canada, they've said they're going to be digital only, and so that will be just a small fraction of how the future work will look at. Again, looking at a SWOT analysis, that a lot of it's a sort of very basic that can be applied to this, in the sense we're looking at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, not only of an organization, of what you need for where you present for what skills, what talents that you need to get the right people, but also I think in the sense of from an so that's the organizational component, but also the individual component. I, as an individual, how would I go out and look at what my strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, to sort of say, well, where can I go get further education? Where can I go get something that's going to match my skills? I mean, this is not new, but it's something that is going to be constantly changing at a greater pace, and we'll have to be doing that sort of analysis. Again, in looking at the sort of CI tools, that looking at sort of some of the tools that we do use, and PESTLE is great analysis, looking at sort of more the non-market functions. So looking at the growth in technological factors, the growth in the political factors. So if you look at political, economical, social, technological I think is the biggest of them all, in the sense of what skills are you going to have to learn, and what where those skills will be applied, right? So learning new programs. I mean, how many people had even heard of Zoom before this pandemic? We'll just use that as an example, and then all the functionality that it does have, and learning how to use it. It's just a small example of the now using sort of the CI methodology to sort of go out and say, well, we'll find what it is that we need to learn, or our organization needs to learn. Again, scenario analysis, and I spoke of this earlier. I think that is going to be so key, both to individuals and organizations, around what will the jobs of the future be, what skills will be needed, where and how do I get those skills. And I think that for this, there was actually these questions, obviously very important, but I think in the last one, to me, is the most important, in the sense of the where and how I get those skills is something that people have struggled with for a long time. Just in the sense that they think, oh my God, I have to go back to school and do another 4-year university degree, or to your community college program. But in reality, it's not. It doesn't have to be that difficult. It doesn't have to be. It's not. There's really no quick fixes. But at the same point in time, it doesn't have to be really difficult either. In the sense that now there are more opportunities for people to go back and do this, get education, get the skills training. But I think that the key to it is going to be around, the scenario analysis that says, what are these jobs? What's the skills? But the key is the collaboration between employers, education institutions, and employees or students, individuals that actually can help them move forward. And I think that within the CI community, we have the skills that can actually help significantly to help individuals and organizations to do that. So looking at this is one of the key outcomes of some of this work is around labor market intelligence. So again, where are the jobs? What are the skills that are needed? And this is ONET. This is one of my favorites. It's in the United States. It's actually partly funded through the Department of Labor. And it provides a whole raft of information about where jobs are, as well as the skills that you need, as well as what is the typical average wage for this, what's the demand like. So I think that having this data is actually very important to understanding the changes that are happening in the workforce. And I think that it's just going to get faster, and we're going to have to actually make sure that the collaboration between those three groups needs to even be tighter. here, again, so not just focusing in the United States, there are a lot of organizations that actually provide this sort of information already. Career One Stop is in the US, Federation of Industry Sector Skills and Standards in the UK, EURES in the EU, and the Labour Market Information Council here in Canada, which are working to develop taxonomies around labor market information, and actually just helping to make those connections between the organization, so that you can see what the employer's needs are, as well as what the education institutions are doing as far as developing with industry partners different programs, I should say, sorry, that help to build training programs or apprenticeship programs that people can use to become employed, and actually also just to continue to be employed, but also in a more challenging role. I think that there's obviously a huge fear of automation taking a lot of jobs, but I think that we could have this argument all day about whether it does or doesn't, but I think that in reality is that, yeah, some jobs will disappear, obviously, by automation, but then if you can move on to something that's a bit more advanced and much more fulfilling, that's what will happen. So I guess the other thing was in developing this organization, what I looked at was sort of the whole concept of continuous learning mindset, again, which I said about how you would actually constantly be going back and learning things and doing things through, whether it be learning a new language or learning a different software program, whether it be it doesn't have to be difficult, and there's also now the number of ways to do that has been increasing. So continuing education courses significantly on the rise, and again accelerated by the pandemic for those people who are temporarily laid off, but maybe permanently laid off because that now that their company organization has operated without their services, they might be permanently laid off, where the company can't continue to go on, so they'll have to move or reskill to do that. And I'll give you some examples of that in a moment. So in doing that with the challenge, there's the 4 critical areas I think that's going to be required. Again, governments, private sector being employers, is universal digital learning, MicroCredentials, which is the sort of smaller, bite-sized chunks of learning, skills-based credentials. So it's sort of like I'll substitute the word competencies as well in there, and then hands-on learning, where people are actually getting work integrated learning or experience, combination of experience and education. And I think that from a CI, strategic foresight perspective, we have a great opportunity to help to connect the individuals and organizations to further this cause. So I mentioned about getting the how you go about getting these skills. For me, there are multiple ways of doing it. I mean, these are just some of them. So the massive open online courses, certainly that they're not new, but certainly the acceleration or take-up of people enrolling in this has increased, and I think that they'll certainly will be necessary for organizations like from the massive open online courses to help people to understand that they can take courses from their own home. They don't have to be that hard. It's a few hours a week. It's online. It's not an onerous task for someone to be able to do that. But I think that again, there's a role that we have to be able to find and to connect the information around what jobs require what skills, and where do you get those skills. There's typical post-secondary education. So post-secondary education institutions have certainly had struggled during the pandemic. This is just a sampling of logos at various places in Canada, United States. I mean, there are millions out there, different opportunities, whether it be online. And as I said earlier, I did some work with some of the colleges here in Canada where they really had to dramatically shift to organize their online learning opportunities. I mean, some places it's harder. How do you teach culinary skills online? How do you teach welding online, right? And the acceleration of that has made people go out and look and say, well, how can we do this? How can we, utilize different tools, whether it be augmented reality, virtual reality, in order to assist us. So, and that connected to certainly employers who would say, yeah, okay, that will work. That will, and they were able to make those connections. Again, the other thing, the private sector, these are, it's a growing opportunity, growing industry and segment is the learning experience platform software. So people like Workday, Xonify, which is here in Canada, Degrees, these are organizations that they're actually providing opportunities for employers to provide training. So I'll just use Xonify as an example, who I know, and what they do is workplace learning, mostly in the retail space, where you're actually training people. They say you worked at Walmart, you could sign on to your terminal. When you sign on, there's a 5-minute training course that you take. You can compete with your fellow employees to do these. It's like 5 minutes, which shows them how to do a refund, how to do customer service. So that type of stuff that's built in, that's employer sponsored, is a fairly important component to this. But we have to sort of help individuals and organizations to understand that these tools are out there, that these things are available to them. Here's a survey that was just done as 85%, this is actually from the Manpower research as well, 85% of US employees who are offered free training like their jobs versus only 60% who are not. And I think one of the things from my perspective, because I do a lot, I said my previous role was actually in policy development and government, but is the opportunities to change how we connect people to education, to jobs, significantly has to change. One of the colleges that I was doing some stuff for, Algonquin College here in Ottawa, at the beginning of the pandemic, they offered online courses through their corporate training organization, and they were able to offer them for free through a grant that they got from the Ontario government here. And they had 380 spaces for their people taking, to take the course, and they had over 4,800 people apply. So the demand is there. It was free education. The demand is there. People want to go and advance their training. It's just the disconnect we have to work on. So what's next? For me, it's looking at sort of developing awareness to show people using the CI skills, strategic foresight skills, of all the opportunities and benefits that they have to develop this lifelong learning piece, and then advocate for and encourage supports for learners, employer-driven training systems, advocate for the greater use of strategic foresight and competitive intelligence tools to help match these or to end the mismatches between employers and education institutions and employees. And the other reason, I guess the bigger push on this is the why. And this is a advert. When I was growing up in Southwest Ontario, this was ArcelorMittal Dofasco, which used to be Dofasco in Hamilton, and this was their logo, and they advertised this everywhere. It's still, in use. Our product is steel. Our strength is people. And I think the key that we'll see, and we're obviously have seen for a while, and just going to accelerate, is that our strength is people, and just using the CI skills that we have, will allow us to help organizations or companies to find the right people and to end the skills mismatch. And I think that particularly in the knowledge-based economy, the demand for the right people is going to be significant. And I think that there's certainly a role that human resources and using these methodologies within the human resources context is going to be an application that is going to grow significantly in order to as I say, to strengthen, organizations and people. So that is my presentation. Thank you for listening to this, which might be a bit abstract, but I think it's important that CI professionals like ourselves, utilize the tools and talents that we have to, just help economy in general and society in general to get to full potential. And with that, I'm open to take any questions that you might have.
Jim, thank you so much. We do have some questions, and I'm just going to throw them forward and let's see if we can comment on those. Hang on a second. I am here. There we go. And this question was submitted. We had some that were submitted in the chat pane, and there were other questions that had been submitted during our registration process. So I am going to begin with those. This one was submitted by Brooke Fanger. Over the next 10 years, will the hype around digital transformation continue to grow, or is it just a phase in the defense industry?
I don't think it's just a phase within the defense industry. I think it's going to be something that is going to be prevalent across all industries. I know certainly, and that's both private sector and public sector. Digital transformation is huge in government here. In the sense that, how do you serve people, whether that be transformation across, services from government or services from organization, how sales is conducted, training is conducted. So it's, I think it's going to be something that's just going to be actually accelerated as we also introduce more different tools as well to do it. As I mentioned earlier, virtual reality, augmented reality. And so some industries will actually be negatively affected, but I think the growth will be more on the positive side.
Okay, thank you. The next question from Kathy Giannone. I apologize, I'm sure I'm not pronouncing people's last names correctly. Are there any CI certificate programs that you recommend, whether through a graduate school or through an association?
Well, I mean, certainly our own through SLA, which is actually, I'll always stick to the shameless plug. Certainly our own is, which is run by Cynthia Chen-Korea, who's also very involved with the CI community, is a great certificate to take. Mercyhurst University in the United States does some really good stuff. And as well as here, and also integrating some of the strategic foresight. There's a great certificate at the University of Houston, And again, shameless Canadian plug, the Ontario College of Art and Design University here has a really good program on, it's a Master's in Design and Strategic Foresight, which looks like an amazing program. So yeah, there's quite a few out there. And if you want to email me later, I can send you some more links.
Okay, that sounds good. And I believe related to that, I just saw something that had come into the chat pane. Let me see if I can read this one off. What is your take on formal CI learning programs for experienced professionals? Is it worth investing in a program like the Academy of CI CIP certification, or do you generally see more value in cobbling together other available courses? That's somewhat related to the last question that we were covering.
I see great value in sort of professional courses like that, not just for the content of what's being provided in the course, but also in the sense of who else is taking the course. So if you're in a group setting or even an online setting where you're doing Zoom call, and you're able to network with like-minded people and that are obviously wanting to learn the same sort of skills, you learn so much just from that. Like, so the formal component piece is not just the formal component piece, but it's also the informal network component that formal learning provides for you. My first, this is sort of the CI is sort of my second career. My first career was in politics, and the networking component, I learned more from sort of the informal piece than I did for the formal, but it helped me with the formal stuff as well. So yeah, I would think that the formal component brings together the like-minded people, which you can then network with. So.
I'm going to combine a couple of these other questions because they're all on similar focus. They're all asking about the types of CI tools, ones that you found to be most useful or relevant, and are they industry specific? Someone was asking about which online learning tools do you find that are the ones that you would suggest? And then there's another question similarly, examples of CI tools that you've used, either subscription or freely available. And what have, in other words, the examples of the tools, which one's useful, relevant, subscription free, and what have they taught you to look for, teaching us to look for? So that's a kind of a combination of three questions that had been forwarded.
Sure. I mean, a lot of the work that I do is actually sort of in the non-market space around government information and information around how that impacts your organization and marketplace. So a lot of free government information that's available both in Canada, the United States, and also OECD and more recently, World Economic Forum actually provides some pretty good resources. As far as tools, subscription, paid, there's stuff like LexisNexis StateNet, which I think is great. Relevant to today's piece. I mean, any of the ones that I mentioned around ONET, Labor Market Information Council, are very decent. And then I mean, I guess it's some of them are fairly industry specific, but I tend to look at like the generic sort of stuff.
Right.
So I mean, those are some examples. I mean, I guess I could help find them industry specific. Just send me an email and I can get some links.
Terrific, terrific. And we just have two more. I know that you had touched on briefly the VR tools, the virtual realities. So, but this question takes it in a different direction a little bit. Do you think virtual reality will be a viable tool for remote or for in-person learning? Conferences with travel restrictions, certainly that's our, current bubble. But how do you think that the VR will be the more viable tool? You know,
Well,
one, other, or both?
I think you can use it's a both thing, in the sense that, and some of them they provide challenges too.
Yeah.
If you look at the VR and AR augmented reality components, and working with some of the colleges here that are teaching skilled trades, and looking at tools that could be utilized that engage haptics, so it's like the video game where you feel the vibrations of while you're shooting a million people or whatever, where you're actually feeling that to do welding. So you're actually, feeling what the sense to do that, and you can actually use that for training. So that's just one example. Another example that I was, quite fortunate to see, and from anyone here listening from Canada, who is with Mike Holmes actually, which is kind of neat. They're sort of a do-it-yourself TV personality here on painting, and it was all digital. And the tool showed you what how the thickness of the paint, how much paint was being used, the pressure, and there's actually no paint coming out. It was all on the screen, but you needed the tools to do it. So that's the in-person component of it. But the sort of virtual from home piece, I think that there's still a ways to go in the sense of, right now the video virtual component is certainly going to be accelerated, and it's just getting the adaptation of the virtual reality tools, even if it's just VR goggle, that sort of stuff, into more and more homes. It's still a few years out, I think.
Yeah, thank you. We have two more questions that have come into the chat pane, so I want to get those since they're right here with us. Connie Crosby has asked if you could please explain what universal digital learning is.
Sure. So universal digital learning, I think, is it should be it's more around the line of how you learn digital platforms that are actually shared across various communities. So it's more of the using digital tools to learn, so that could be transferable. So in the sense of, there are a lot of skills that we have that may seem very industry specific, but they're actually something that's much more transferable. So that's the universality component of it. So the learning through digital tools that we can use, we'll take project management as an example. It could be used for software, could be used for a construction project or an engineering project. But it's the digital learning to get more transferable skills.
I see.
That's my understanding of it, but
well, they've asked for your example, so we're
there you
good
go.
with that.
That's all you got.
And there's another question here from Adite Theta. Could you list a few examples of micro-credentials?
Oh, sure. So micro-credentials would be, okay, yeah, that's actually a tough question, because I never thought about it in a list of the examples. But in essence, the micro-credentials would be short courses. So a course on, say, LinkedIn Learning, where you do that, and you have a digital badge that is on. You'll see much more of that increase with regard to you get that small, so it doesn't take a long period of time. It's not a university degree, it's not it, but it's this particular skill set, and then that you actually would go through and take the education for it, and then you could show the digital badge on your LinkedIn profile. I mean, that's probably the most notable example of it. It really has to do with the shorter duration of the course, but again, that also could then, that doesn't mean it's all general information. It could be very, very, specific. I have a friend of mine who, he's a soil scientist in Scotland, and he studies like how soil breaks down. Like, okay, that's like pretty small piece, right? Then if I were to explain to you the applications of that, you'd be fascinated. I mean, but the micro piece is just that you're learning a particular micro skill component, and that's the credential to show that you've taken that learning. And I think it's the more of the bite-sized chunks of stuff that people can easily digest to it helps significantly in getting that all on their own time. And I think that it actually also helps to display that you've learned a particular skill that, in your sort of progress through education. It's not that formal, I went back and took a 4-year university degree.
Thank you. It's interesting that you mentioned the digital badges, because I think the terminology both for something like that and calling it micro-credentials, it's almost as if the title came in later. I have a couple of digital badges myself, but I hadn't thought of them as micro-credentials. I'd been working on an archive many years ago, and it contained, my responsibility were the 11,000 audio tapes of music that had been recorded in the 50s. And it was now music that would have been lost had it not been recorded then. But on the other hand, it was the care and feeding of those tapes, and that's why I went ahead for the certifications on how we were going to have to handle them. But I had never thought that those badges and that course would have fit into micro-credentials. But that, it's almost as if, like I said, the titles come together. So we do have one more question from a person you've never heard of, and this would be JP Radicek.
JP, I don't know if I can answer this.
Former president of the CI community, for all of those still with us. And JP's question is, how are CI pros helping internal peers learn and grow their, what he calls the CI IQ, teaching capabilities, what to collect, what would be the give and take there between the pros and their internal peers?
Well, again, I'm going to shamelessly plug SLA and this community because I think that this is one of the greatest resources that we have. Again, organizations like the Council of CI Fellows that actually have webinars like this. I mean, so you took an hour out of your day to participate in this webinar. Hopefully you learned something, and your brain's still not full, but it's you're still contributing to learning things. And I think that the key to the CI professionals is we are participating in a lot of collaborative work, whether it be through webinars or conferences, and the training programs, and actually also just the sharing of ideas and resources. And I think that this community, and I've only just been on the board of SLA for a year, and seeing that this community as a model for the whole association, in the sense of the programming that we're doing, in the sense of networking we're doing, the resources, and hopefully we can also show that through participating in the SLA Innovation Challenge. But so I think that hopefully that answers your question, JP. But I think there's a lot of opportunities that we have to actually, and if you don't like the answer, JP, you can always phone me directly and just give me grief. But I think that we are actually providing a lot of resources that I know that SLA is coming out with some our learning management system, and we have an opportunity to put training courses on that as well, and that we can share resources and teach and help to teach each other.
Thank you. Jim, I think that's it for our questions. We just have a few more minutes, so I do want to thank you again for an amazing webinar. There's been a request for a Your Brain is Not Full badge for today's session, so maybe we'll have to think about that one. And do you have any closing remarks that you'd like to share with us?
No, I just want to thank all the people that have helped me with this crazy madness idea that I've been working on for a while, and hopefully that the combination of CI skills, strategic foresight can contribute to helping people in organizations to find the skills that they need, find the ways to contribute to their workplaces, and that the organizations contribute to the economy. And I just thank you for the opportunity for sharing that today.
Well, thank you again, Jim. And for those of you who do want to contact Jim, his contact information is still on the screen in front of us. I just have a couple of closing housekeeping items for everyone. And of course, again, we do want to thank you, the audience, for joining the webinar and for your participation today. One lucky attendee will be randomly selected to win $25. So you'll receive an email from us if it is you. And just to remind you all that this webinar has been recorded, so please watch for an email following the webinar, and that'll have the link to the recording, and it'll be on hosted on SLA CIC's YouTube channel. And actually, you'll find all of our webinars there as well. There will be another SLA CIC webinar in January, and so stay tuned to our media channels as I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the webinar, and because we'll have the date announced in the coming weeks, and we really would love to stay in touch with you. I have one more example of Jim's continuing learning from a CI perspective. It's the fluff example, along with our thank you and safe and happy holiday message. And I found it a few weeks ago. It happens to be a new holiday movie called Jingle Jangle. You can find it on Netflix. And of course, one of the producers is the musician John Legend. It has a very diverse cast, but mostly the main message, besides its obvious one, is actually out of the box thinking. Because as I'm watching this, besides enjoying it for itself, I thought, this is very cool. If you think about this, there's all sorts of flights of imagination and a little bit of technical data, but it was cute, and it definitely not too much of a stretch, but you could definitely see a CI perspective in that. So we do want to thank all of you, and of course wish all of you safe and happy holidays, and we will see you next year. Thanks again for coming. Stay well. Bye.
Stay safe. Bye.